beginning of man's civilization. So in the long winter months, men grew as soul beings, or had the opportunity to so improve themselves. The Egyptians went further than this, however, by analogy. They insisted that there was actually a difference in the spiritual vibration and energy of the sun, by which the psychic life of man was most rapidly advanced at this time. That therefore man inwardly grew. The dark inner nature of him received the light of the sun that was taken from his body. His material life grew less. His spiritual contact grew greater. Therefore, the greatest and most important event in the entire spiritual cycle of the sun mystery was reserved for the winter solstice, the midst of winter. For it was at the winter solstice, in the darkness of man's own first internal neurotic existence, that the messianic mystery was born. It was in the midst of the darkness of his own inner life that the first rays of the sun of the messianic dispensation, the sotar of the gnosis, was first heralded, and the three winter signs as three wise men came to pay homage to the crib of the child. All of these point out that in the darkness of man's spiritual winter, the sun of the soul cast its greatest light. This was perfectly in conformity with the Egyptian ritual, and with also many of the teachings of the Greeks, Hindus, and Chinese. Thus we have something that perhaps is a little startling at first, but not as much so as you might imagine. For we have a strange belief in our daily living that through certain sorrows or through certain tribulations, the spiritual powers of man are quickened. That man never seeks light as much as when his darkness is the most difficult and dangerous. In this, therefore, we have the proper inducement. And if it be true, as the Egyptians said, that the sun's rays change their quality in the winter, so that they are attuned to the heart and soul focus rather than to the body focus. That in the winter the rays of the sun pierce through matter but do not quicken it, and enter into the psychic life of things. That in the winter half of the year, so to say, or the descending half or arc, all inner things are strengthened. In the outer part of the summer and spring and early fall months, the outer parts are strengthened. But it is the life in the seed, or in the soul of man, which is the most important. So the sun, in our winter, shines into the inner part of our lives, rising in glory over the great fields of Amentet. The Egyptians are known to have used trances, hypnosis, and other similar devices in their religion. In this they were not essentially different from other primitive people. We know also that in trances and in sleep, the Egyptians believed that they could come into the presence of the great gods of Amentet. Therefore, that in this sleep of death, in this trance, man had an experience of inner life. Always initiation and death were used as parallel symbols. And the individual internalizing, searching for value, must seek for this internal sun which shines in the darkness, but is not known by the darkness. If then, during this same season of the annual motion of the sun, from the autumnal equinox to the vernal equinox through the winter solstice, this sun is shining in Amentet, it means that the god has not died. It is not that the god is dead, it merely appears to be dead because it sleepeth. Now this god actually does not sleep in its own nature. When Osiris died, he did not merely rest in the mastaba of the tomb. He went forth into another lower region and there ruled over the quick and the dead. In the same way, the soul of man in sleep does not merely lie down in darkness. It moves into another world, where it is lighted by another sun. In the same way, man searching for value, passing through the ceremonies of the mystery ritual, is moving into another world, which is lighted by the sun of the soul. And it is this ever-coming sun which is the promise. This is the true light that lighteth every man who cometh into the world. For it is the light within himself. And this light is strengthened more in that time when material things are less favored. So the Egyptians actually believed that when the sun went to sleep for outward things, it burst into glory inside of man. And that when it set in the west, it rose in the east of man's heart. And when it rose in the east of the earth, it sat in the west of man's heart. For man's outer works were works of the light of day, but the inner mystery of his soul were works of the light of night, not the darkness of night. For there was no darkness, except man's own ignorance of light. And each day, the sun rising was like his own consciousness. For when he woke in the morning, the sun rose through his eyes and through his sensory perceptions, and he saw the day. But when he went to sleep at night, the sun seemed to set, and he saw no more of the day. But the moment he was asleep, the Egyptians believed that he went into the world of another dawn. And here, within himself, the light continued to shine. I think Buddhism has much the same concept, but it points out the mysterious curtain which conceals the ship of the sun. That when it goes down over the mountains of the west, man no longer sees light. But man who has become inwardly wise is able to experience light, like Apuleius, who initiated into the mysteries, stood upon the threshold of Persephone, the underworld, and declared that he beheld the sun shining beneath his feet under the earth. And so the sun of the inner world shines in the night. And this sun is our own psychic entity, our own psychic life. And it gains its strength from the sun. And just as the seed in the ground is quickened by the water and by the ray of the sun, so the seed in the soul, the seed of the tree of life and of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, these seeds are quickened by the Eucharist of the fire and water of the sun. The Egyptian made much of this theology, and he declared that it could be set upon the great astronomical form and would reveal to us the deeper meaning of many of the common and familiar symbols, devices, and ideas with which we are concerned today. Now our time is up, and I think it's time for you to all commune with the sun in your own soul in the quietude of rest.